The bell tolls at midnight. Greetings. I'd like to welcome all of my midnight marauders. Come on in, get comfy, and lend me your imagination. I'd like to ask you a serious question. Can the dead really exact revenge on the living? Well, in one quiet, humdrum community, revenge is best served cold. I call this little jack-o'-lantern sweet treat the Halloween party. Angie Cartwright is having another one of her terrible nightmares. She lies in her bed, tossing and turning, sweat pouring from her brow, her eyes flickering so much you can see only the whites of them. Her dog Venom notices and quickly jumps up onto the bed and begins to bark and lick her face to wake her up. Angie screams and propels herself up to a sitting position with clenched fists. Venom begins to wag his tail as Angie rubs his back and says, "What would I ever do without you, boy?" Angie jumps out of bed and looks out the window of her attic-style bedroom with the triangular ceiling and notices her neighbor, Joe's Harley, parked out on the street with all of his biker friends smoking pot and playing Billy Idol so freaking loud that it could literally wake the dead. She also notices that everyone is dressed in some sort of get-up. Angie mumbles, "What the hell is going on over there?" She jumps in the shower all of 5 minutes, washes her box-dyed jet-black hair, finishes showering and throws on a pair of faded black leggings and black combat boots and a black leather jacket with the chain hanging on the pocket. She proceeds to adorn her pierced ears with several silver earrings, a pierced lip ring, and 3 skull finger rings, and a silver Grateful Dead dog collar, all while painting black eyeliner and black lipstick on so thick that she looks as if she's all set for a Kiss Band concert. Angie grabbed her black backpack and hurried down the stairs to try and beat the crowd of loudmouths who always make fun of her looks whenever they see her. They usually walk to school around 7:30 a.m., so today she's getting an early start to avoid the drama. She notices her mom hasn't made it home yet from her overnight nursing shift at the hospital. Angie grabs an apple out of the fruit bowl on the kitchen countertop and notices a Happy Halloween party brochure next to the coffee pot. She also notices the address is Joe's house right across the street. Suddenly, an eerie chill comes over Angie, and she comes up with an idea that might make this Halloween party the most terrifying of them all. Angie places the apple between her teeth, folds the Halloween party brochure, stuffs it in her backpack, exits the front door, and locks it just in time to be met with a loud diss from Johnny Miller. "Whoo! Don't you look spooky? What's that costume called? Oh, I forgot she's not wearing one." The crowd burst into laughter as Angie tries to ignore them and continue her fast pace down the street to her local high school in Wisconsin, Lakewood High School, to be exact, where everyone absolutely loves a good Halloween party. Angie makes it into class 2 minutes late, and Mr. Canley stops talking, peers over his bifocals, and says, "Glad you decided to bless us with your presence today, Miss Cartwright." Angie replied, "Sorry, Mr. Canley, it won't happen again." Mr. Canley looked unimpressed as Angie took her seat. He proceeded to say, "In light of this year's Halloween party held here at Lakewood tomorrow, there will be no homework tonight." The class cheered and whistled and clapped. The 45-minute class seemed like forever, but Angie had a half day of school planned for herself to prepare for the Halloween party. Not the one at the school, but the Halloween party at Joe's house. She decided to go home and make her own costume, one that no one would ever suspect was her wearing it. She hurried home just in time to greet her mom in the driveway, making up a story about a half day at school due to the Halloween party taking place on campus tomorrow night. Angie breathed a sigh of relief, saying under her breath, "Yes." She bought it. Angie rushed upstairs, greeted by Venom, who couldn't stop wagging his tail, tossed her backpack on her bedroom chair, and pulled out an old Ouija board from underneath her bed that she had bought at an old thrift store in town 3 months ago that was going out of business. She sat on her bed and blew the dust off of it and noticed something she hadn't seen on the box before. A name that looks like it was written in some sort of dark ink or dark burgundy marker, followed by the words, "Invite me in." Angie looked at the box for a second, curious about some of the things she'd heard about games such as these, but she shrugged it off and opened the box anyway. Angie looked confused at all of the numbers and letters and things she was totally unfamiliar with on this board. She felt an unease come over her holding the board and set it on the chair in her room as she got out her sewing kit to make herself the coolest costume ever rocked at a Halloween party. For whatever reason, Angie decided to use the name on the Ouija board box upon stitching herself a black suit with a skull and bones logo right over the front pocket. She also trimmed an old short black wig into a pixie cut and found an old black fake mustache in an old costume box in the closet that belonged to her mom. She also decided to use the name on the box for her costume, which read Fletcher Foster. Halloween night at around 6:30 p.m., Angie was downstairs eating popcorn with her mom, Janice, on the couch when Angie turned to her and said, "Mom, they're having a Halloween party at the school tonight at 9 p.m. and I really want to go." Janice seemed taken back, due to the fact that Angie hardly goes anywhere these days ever since her dad passed away 2 years ago. Janice, being the protective mom that she is, said, "Honey, there's a lot of kooks out there tonight. Besides, I thought we were going to stay up late and watch scary movies together tonight." Angie looked at Janice with an anxious look on her face while saying, "But Mom, all of my classmates will be there. It's only for a few hours." Janice said, "All right, go on and go, but you come home before midnight, okay?" Angie shot upstairs like a bat out of hell, peeled off her comfy sweats, and proceeded to put on this macabre-looking black suit she had sewn for herself. She also put on this short black wig and the mustache, and for some strange reason, she added a few wounds to her face with the art makeup that was in the costume box. The last finishing touches would be a pair of black bifocals that were found in the box with the Ouija board. She placed the glasses on her face and stared in the mirror and was completely unrecognizable. She slid the Ouija board in her backpack and tiptoed past a now snoring Janice, who had already fallen asleep on the living room couch. The music was blaring across the street. It was now 11 p.m., and the street was lined with motorcycles for as far down the block as you could see. Angie couldn't wait to go inside and see who's in there doing what. All she could think about was getting some dirt on camera about these idiots that she could use against them in hopes they'd stop bullying her and leave her alone. She also wanted to see if anyone knew how to play this crazy spirit board game. Angie was next in line at the front door, and wouldn't you know, Johnny Miller asked, "Hey, who are you supposed to be?" Angie replied in her deepest male voice, "I'm Fletcher Foster, the notorious serial killer." Johnny looked at Angie in shock from what she just said. Still not recognizing her, he shook off the comment, laughed, and replied, "So what do you want me to do?" A confused Angie looked him in the eyes and said, "I want you to let me in." Johnny giggled for a split second and said, "Okay, trooper, come on in." Angie walked across the door entrance and began to get dizzy instantly. She walked through the house as if she was in a trance and felt as though she was replaying a grisly scene straight out of a horror movie. There was Halloween decor everywhere and a variety of skeleton costumes worn by the guests. A Halloween strobe light blinked off and on in a long corridor with a fog machine next to it, making it almost impossible to see who is who. Suddenly, a deep, crackling voice enveloped her ear, something like an echo, an out-of-body sounding sinister voice saying, "I'm in." Almost immediately, she turned her head towards the foggy, strobe-lit corridor just in time to see a pale, thin gray figure of a young man, dressed in her exact Halloween costume, rigidly creeping her way through the strobe-lit fog. Angie became paralyzed with fear and decided to exit the house. Quickly, Angie walked straight to the backyard, where there were several partygoers drinking and being obnoxious. She sat down on a bench next to an apricot tree in the backyard, where someone was already sitting in the dark with their head down, quietly, presumably drunk. Then this dark figure grabbed Angie's backpack right off of her shoulder and tossed it into the crowd, saying in a low, unsettling voice, "Let's play a game." When Angie turned to look at this withered-looking figure sitting next to her on the bench, there was absolutely no one there. However, a belligerent drunk scooped up Angie's backpack and laughingly said, "Hey man, whatever you're selling, I'm buying." He opened up the backpack and the Ouija board fell out. Everyone looked intrigued by this strange-looking board game. Soon there were 4 to 5 people asking to play, but Angie still felt dizzy and sat silent as a few partygoers began to ask the board questions. "Who are you?" one girl asked. The Ouija spelled out FF. Intrigued, a guy asked, "Are you male or female?" "Male!" The disc slid across the board with ease as 2 young ladies lightly had their hands barely touching it. Another girl asked, "Why are you here tonight?" The disc swiftly spelled out, "Revenge." Just then, the music stopped playing and all of the lights in the house went out. Angie thought to herself, clearly this had to be some kind of Halloween scare tactic to prank some of the partygoers or some sort of distraction. Distorted and confused, Angie remembered standing next to the table, noticing that the punch bowl bore the exact same symbol she had stitched on her jacket pocket. She also noticed what looked like that gruesome, skinny little man looking back at her from the reflection of the punch bowl. Then everything went black. The next day, Angie awoke to the sound of sirens blaring and jumped out of bed, noticing they were parked at Joe's house. Angie was exhausted, her head pounding, yet had no recollection of how she got home, not even going to bed last night. She said to herself, "Damn, 1 can of beer did all of that?" The Halloween decorations were still out on the lawn, and so were several creepy black body bags, but Angie didn't remember those particular decorations out on the lawn as she walked across the grass and up to Joe's front door last night. Angie rushed downstairs and was met by her mom, Janice, and the police, who were explaining to her mother of a mass poisoning at the Halloween party across the street last night. Angie's mom, Janice, was crying hysterically and thanking God that her daughter went to the school party instead of their neighbor's Halloween party across the street. The officer was also glad that Angie supposedly did not attend that particular party. Due to a yellow substance around the mouths of the deceased, it was immediately assumed by authorities that it must have been something multiple partygoers had consumed. It was found that a punch bowl with a symbol of a Halloween skull and bones had been spiked with a potent poison that many partygoers had ingested, unfortunately. The loudmouth, belligerent Johnny Miller was taken into custody on 25 counts of poisoning, in which 4 of the victims succumbed to the incident. He was booked on attempted murder charges, but the whole time he kept saying all he remembered was being asked by a skinny, odd-looking kid to let him come inside and everything else was a blur after that. However, detectives did convey to the public that about 15 years ago, no more than 5 miles from this incident that took place tonight, some kid by the name of Fletcher Foster was at a Halloween party and was being made the butt of every mean and nasty joke by Johnny Miller. Sadly, multiple murders and a suicide took place that night when Fletcher Foster spiked all the drinks with arsenic, killing 15 partygoers and even consumed some himself. Needless to say, he didn't make it, nor did 15 other kids from his neighborhood. Johnny Miller, known for being a notorious bully to Fletcher Foster, was also starting to relentlessly bully Angie Cartwright. Earlier, I asked a question. Here's my answer. Yes, I believe the dead can absolutely exact revenge on the living. Happy hallowed dreams.